There are two concepts that feel truly fundamental to sewing to me, and I think it's really important to understand them before you even approach your sewing machine. Much of sewing is about sticking two pieces of fabric together so that they stay stuck, which I think any non-sewer would understand. But a lot of it is also about hiding away those raw fraying edges so that they're not seen on the outside of your garment. So much of what we're doing in sewing is all about hiding away those raw edges. And these two concepts work together to make those two things happen. The first is the idea of seam allowances. Seam allowances is the word for that bit of fabric in between where your stitches are and the raw edge of your fabric is. They're really important structurally for keeping those two pieces of fabric stuck together. If you were to sew right along the edges of your fabric, it would just come apart. That little extra bit of fabric keeps the stitches from pulling through the weave of your fabric. The other reason seam allowances are so important is because they act as a guide for where your stitches belong. When we're sewing, we're typically not following a drawn line or freewheeling. We're usually using the raw edge of the fabric as a guide, along with some markers along our machine. To do this, you're focusing on the edge of your fabric and keeping it in line with one of the markers on your machine. For example, I typically sew with a 1/2-inch seam allowance. So first of all, when I'm making patterns, I'm adding a 1/2-inch seam allowance to all my seam lines. And then when I'm sewing, I'm focused on lining up the edge of my fabric with the 1/2-inch marker on my machine. I know that my needle is a 1/2 inch away from that marker, so as long as those things are lined up, my sew lines will fit right where I wanted them to. This is why it's really important to take your time when cutting. You want clean lines that are easy to follow and are no more and no less than whatever fabric your pattern needs, plus whatever seam allowance you're accounting for. The other concept I want to talk about is the idea of right sides together. All fabric has a right side and a wrong side. You as the sewer gets to decide what is the wrong side, what is the right side, but the right side is defined by whatever is going to face outward. The wrong side would be what's touching your body. When we're sewing, we're often sewing right sides together, meaning the side of the fabric that you want to be facing out when you're done with your garment is actually facing each other when we sew. It's almost like you're sewing inside out. The result is that when we open up that seam, all the raw fraying edges are on the same side as the wrong side of the fabric, and on the right side, all you see is a nice clean seam line. And that's like fundamentally how sewing works. Understanding just, at least conceptually, those two ideas is really what you need to start experimenting. Try a pattern. Try making your own pattern. Make it all up as you go along. It'll all be a little bit easier if you do so right sides together and with seam allowances in mind.